And three, two, one, and we're live. David Jimmie, it's an honor to have you on. Please give us a brief introduction.
Hey Latas, good morning. I'm David Jimmie. My traditional name, my Chilliwack name is Lenuchwiat. Born and raised here in Chilliwack. Parents are from, my mom is from England and my dad is from here. My grandparents on my mother's side are also from Chesterfield, England, and my grandparents on my father's side are my grandfather from Squiala and my grandmother from Squaw.
Wow.
Mhm.
And you have done so much for the community. It's tough to choose a place to start, but I would like to start with just some of your family so we can get a better understanding and start from there, and then maybe have that will help inform the conversation later on.
Sure. Um, I think I actually want to start by just providing a bit of appreciation to my family, to the Jimmie family right now. Just going through a bit of a tough time. Um, Unfortunately, in communities we're with large families, we often go through loss, and at a time of loss, you really see family come together. And unfortunately for Squiala and for our Jimmie family, we've lost two family members just over the last 2 weeks. And I was contemplating whether or not to come on and do this because we are in the middle of one of the losses. But I also felt that it was important because people then can see also what happens within community. People can have an opportunity to see what more is out there in First Nations communities. Not only that, I think taking the opportunity to raise a little bit of awareness. Sometimes we have individuals in our communities, not only in the First Nations communities, that are going through difficult times, and they're finding a really hard. They find it difficult to cope, and some people um, don't know where to turn. They don't know what is available to them, and so I wanted to also just take a moment to talk about and acknowledge that um, there are a lot of people out there suffering still. A lot of our youth facing tough challenges, and we have to be aware. I think as individuals, as leaders, whether or not you're in a leadership position, is just being mindful and aware to recognize the signals and recognize when somebody is struggling, and be able to ask them. Just a simple conversation sometimes will go a long way. So I wanted to acknowledge my family because over the last 2 weeks, I've really seen our family come together and rally in support of the direct family's loss. Um, we come together, we bring meals, we come and just provide that support. We'll have our those that have the gift of drumming and carry those cultural teachings will come and share songs to help uplift the spirit. So I just wanted to take a moment because it is important. I know in a lot of instances, some people don't have anybody, and they go through a process of loss and don't know where to start and don't have the supports. And we see large communities like ours come together, and family really sticks together and is there for one another. So I just wanted to just um, acknowledge them for everything that they do, and also raise that awareness. We have a lot of issues in communities that I think we need to be alive to, and so I just wanted to take that moment. Family wise, growing up, I was a second youngest in my family, a large family. There were 7 boys and 2 sisters, and growing up here in Chilliwack, I grew up on the reserve of Squiala, and my parents separated at a young age, so we kind of had a decision where we were going. A few of us went with my mother, and so we bounced around for a while. My mom is an extremely resilient woman who had very tough challenges raising boys and providing for us. And I feel very fortunate that we had her to come and step up. I can remember her working 2, 3 jobs and still putting us in hockey. That many kids and running around and doing all of those things. So we did bounce around quite a bit. I saw a lot of Chilliwack. We lived kind of from house to house for a little while. And then I moved back and forth to my dad's a little bit growing up too, which was a little bit difficult. part of the reason for the separation was due to alcohol and with my father, and he just wasn't, again, a struggle for him, and he later on in life had dealt with that struggle and was sober for a number of years before he had passed. So I think growing up, being exposed to that, learning from that, like that's what you have to do, is you have to take an opportunity to step back and go, okay, what are the things that shaped you growing up? And it's being able to recognize, that hard work from my mother, that difficult position from my father. And then later, as you're trying to work through things, understand why they were the way they were. And with my father, you just have to look at the historical impacts of Indigenous people right across the country. And you have a pretty good idea of what they were exposed to, the challenges they had, and the lack of parenting. I know residential schools has has had a lot of attention over the years, and it's rightfully so. These children grew up essentially without parents, and then they were trying to figure out how to be parents themselves. So, that's a little bit about my family and growing up, I guess.
Well, going to that point, what you said earlier about grieving and going through that loss, it's really easy to think that will all just happen and family will come together. But it's a lot of work to have the small conversations to bring people together. And I think that's something we don't talk enough about. The stages of grief are normal, but how we can come together and actually make that something that brings the family together is something that doesn't always happen.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it tears the family apart. We start fighting over ridiculous things like the will and who gets what, and that can really detract from a whole person's life, 80 years, like a life of somebody, and we can lose that. Mm-hmm. And I think that's important to bring to light. And to Indigenous people's credit, we do grieve so much more, in my view, because it is a whole community thing. When I was working on the resource manual, I would have chiefs say, like, we're dealing with loss, so we're not going to deal with this right now because the community's grieving. And that's a way bigger statement, because you would never hear, like, the city of Chilliwack is currently like, it doesn't come across that way, but that can happen in Indigenous communities. And those are things that I also don't think are brought up in the media when we're talking about Indigenous issues, is how we handle important things like grief. And so I think that is important to talk about, because I do think that is something where Indigenous people really do come together.
Yeah. And, every community operates differently, and we recognize and have been through it so many times that we understand how difficult it is for the family. So we step in and try to do as much as possible to take any pressures off of the family. So, unfortunately, I've had to be a part of, coordinate, write eulogies more than anybody should, I think, in a short span of 11 years of being chief, 10 years of being chief. And it's taxing. It's really heavy work. It's emotionally and spiritually draining. And there's the upside of it, knowing that you're there to take that pressure off the family. But people don't understand what's involved. A cultural, traditional ceremony there's a lot of work that has to take place. And so we try to step in so that the family does have time just to simply sit back, relax, and not relax, but to sort of have that time together and not have to worry about the little details of who's doing what's going to be done, how it's going to work. We have our process of sitting down with the family to get sort of initial requests and wishes from the family to honor them. And then we try to do as much as we can in the community. And that's, again, every community is different, but we found that it's, having gone through loss myself, it's important, and you really have to be mindful of where people are at in those stages. Absolutely.
And I think that going back to my experience with you previously, you may not have realized this, but when I was a court worker working with individuals who were facing the court system, they were the ones wanting to talk to you and knowing that you were the resource to go to. And that was kind of my first interaction with your name, was people recognizing, like, well, my chief is amazing, and like if I need something, I know I can go to him. And it was like, this is so unique for me, because usually it's, who do you have that you can turn to right now? And the list is short, and they're nervous, or they're already with the person that they believe they can turn to. And to be able to turn to you and have this name that keeps reoccurring, and I hear it in the community all the time, that was my experience. And it was so humbling to know that it didn't feel like they were doing it to bring your name up and show off that they know you. It was like I need this person and they're amazing. And so it was kind of like a glimpse into how other people see you. And that was so humbling for me, because it does show that people's decisions and how they operate in their community makes a difference. It does show up in the important moments.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that I learned early on was in positions of leadership, I think it's very important to lead by example. So it's not about, having a status or anything like that. People that know me know that they'll come in and say, Chief David or Mr. Jimmie, as you welcomed me this morning, and I'm like, just Dave is good. I don't, I'm not, title is just a word. There are many people out there that don't have a title in front of their name that do exceptional work. They're there for families. They're there to support. They see something happening and they jump forward, and they may not be recognized by the name or having that title. So I understand titles, and I understand how people can connect them to certain positions. But at the end of the day, you're really just there to try to provide support and be there and help, whether it's your own members or even friends or family. I think it is part of the biggest contribution